I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati.
All right. Happy Thursday. Welcome to Sabby Sabs podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. My special guest tonight is Ron Placone. Ron, welcome back.
Thanks for having me. Always love being on with you. And congrats, you were on it was like one of the big shows that The Hill does, right? Weren't you on a thing? I saw something online. Did I dream this? Now I'm embarrassed. What happened? You did something.
Yeah, no, I was on Rising.
Okay, all right. So I didn't hallucinate this. All right. Well, congratulations on that. I didn't get to watch the segment, but congrats on that. I don't really watch Rising, but congrats.
Thanks so much. Thanks. Welcome. So for those who are not aware, Ron has been investing a lot of time in digital rights. There is a bill, I believe, is it in the House or the Senate?
It's just floating around Congress right now. I mean, it was penned by Amy Klobuchar and Chuck Grassley, so a Democrat and a Republican. And it's been sitting. Chuck Schumer's got to bring it to the vote. You know, being in charge of the Senate, he's got to bring it to the vote. So it's just kind of floating around there in the Senate right now. And He's been promising a vote for a while now, and we'll get into why that's really, really important that we get the vote on this.
That's right. So I want to bring up, you have a recent Substack article, which is discussing more problems with Amazon. And I know that you're really big on, we need to break up these big companies. And Amazon is a perfect example. And in this article, you reference the most dangerous merger yet. Can we talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So there's two mergers involved. One Medical and iRobot. iRobot seems to be getting like the most attention, as it should. I would actually argue that One Medical is even more dangerous, but we'll start with iRobot. So iRobot, they make the cameras that are put in your Roombas. So Now if you have a Roomba, Amazon is basically going to be able to surveil your entire house. Like they're going to be able to see your floor plans, see the stuff in your house, and what have you. And you also look at what Amazon did when they acquired Ring. When they acquired Ring, they pretty much cornered the market of, front door cams and, pretty much monopolized it. And they will also give your Ring footage to law enforcement whenever law enforcement asks. So it's an incredibly corrupt Orwellian thing. Basically, if everyone has a Ring cam, your entire neighborhood is under surveillance now. And law enforcement has used it for very honest means, like trying to find information on an ex-girlfriend they're mad at. It's stuff like that. So it's big growth. But so now that's going on inside your house because Amazon has acquired iRobot, which makes the cameras for Roombas. So if you're going to get one of those, I use a broom and a dustpan like an old-fashioned guy. I'm a simple man, I suppose. But if you're going to get one of those things, I suggest not getting a Roomba. So that's the first merger, because keep in mind, Amazon harvests your data to sell you more shit already. So now they're going to have the cameras from your floor plans, basically. The reason I say the One Medical is even more dangerous, which you might be thinking like, Rod, that's pretty messed up what you just said. There's something even worse. Oh, buckle in. I would say there is. So One Medical does healthcare. So Jeff Bezos is getting involved with healthcare. Now, One Medical starts at about $199 a year, which, I mean, for a lot of people, that's a pretty reasonable healthcare plan. It specializes a lot in telehealth. So like virtual health visits, stuff like that. Now, why this is particularly scary. First of all, Jeff Bezos getting involved in healthcare is frightening enough, considering his track record as a human being. But also, you think about what he did with Amazon. Like, what did he do? Well, he had a bunch of cash from his parents and their rich friends, and he operated what was originally an online brick and mortar book outlet, right? They were selling books online, which isn't the most lucrative idea in the world, especially back then when the internet wasn't what it is today. So he operated at a loss for as long as he needed to completely dominate the market of online commerce, which brings Amazon to what it is today. So what do you think he's going to do with One Medical? He's going to do the same freaking thing, except in healthcare. At least that's what he's going to try to do. He's going to try to monopolize the healthcare industry. We already have the most corrupt, for-profit, predatory healthcare system in the industrialized freaking world. What could make it somehow even worse if Jeff Bezos freaking monopolized it? And that's what he's going to try to do. And he can operate at a loss as long as he needs to because he has unlimited freaking cash. So this is step one at him trying to monopolize our healthcare. That's not an embellishment. That's what he's going to try to do. I mean, you look at past behavior, that's clearly what he's going to try to do. And it is frightening beyond comprehension.
Well, this is another reason why we need to have Medicare for all.
Yeah. Well, now you have another juggernaut. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but now you have another juggernaut directly fighting against it too. Now he's going to really put his chips in fighting against Medicare for all because that would hurt this.
Are there any kind of limitations to how many companies they can acquire? Because so I know Amazon acquired Whole Foods. Now we have iRobot coming up, this One Medical, Ring. Like how long can they continue to do this?
I know it sounds like I'm like pitching you a dystopian script that I wrote. You're like, this villain sounds too unbelievable, Ron. Go back to the drawing board. But no, this shit's real, y'all. So here's the thing. We're supposed to have some enforcement with this stuff. We have the FTC. However, whether it's MGM, whether it's Discovery, whether it's HBO, whether it's Time Warner, whether it's Amazon, they always seem to be asleep at the wheel. Another update on this is that 30 different organizations ranging from digital rights group, like the one I collaborate with, Fight for the Future, along with some of the Teamsters. So you got people from digital rights, people from labor. They have sent a letter to the FTC asking them to act on the iRobot merger and demanding that it be stopped, that they step in and stop this from happening. So we'll see. But yeah, I mean, in verbiage, there's a limitation on all this stuff, but it's not always enforced the way it's supposed to be.
This is crazy. This portion right here, simultaneously, over 30 labor groups are putting the pressure on Amazon CEO to testify to Congress. Yeah. The conditions at Amazon facilities have deteriorated to the point where over 34,000 injuries were reported last year. This is something where I feel like Congress does need to step in. I know for a fact, even the clothing industry is taking a hit with Amazon, because I've watched them close multiple retail stores at Cambridge Side Galleria here. Again, I was asking them, why are you closing all these stores in the mall? The mall's still there, but why are you closing all these stores? And they said that, well, we're not making our sales because everyone's shopping online. And so it's affecting retail stores, it's affecting convenience stores, grocery stores. And this is going to get to the point where Amazon owns, or they have their hand in almost every category when it comes to retail and merchandise. Who's going to be left? How do you compete with Amazon when they're offering everything online? They're offering a Prime membership and they're telling you can get your goods within 2 days. Yeah. To me, it just... How do we stop this? Like, do we just continue to tell people keep supporting the retail stores and your grocery stores and especially the small businesses, the mom and pop shops? But what do you say to people where they may live like in a rural town in America, and a lot of these stores have closed and Amazon is their only option?
So a couple quick things, but I do have a direct answer for that question. So the part in the article that you referenced, that was actually a different letter in addition to the one I just mentioned, because that was in regards to, in July, 3 warehouse workers died while on the job in New Jersey. In 3 weeks, I mean, they were having a heat wave out there. 3 different workers died from the warehouse conditions. They are that bad that it is literally killing people. So 30 different groups sent a letter urging the CEO, who isn't Jeff Bezos, it's just someone else he appointed, but really Jeff Bezos is calling the shots. We all know this, but they want the Amazon CEO to have to testify because of all this. So this is like just all around a gross abuse of power in the digital sphere, in the labor sphere, and everywhere else. So what can you do? I mean, obviously, I always tell people, because you bring up like some people, it's really hard to avoid Amazon in many cases. That's certainly true. I always tell people, sure, do your best as a consumer, but it depends on where you're at. Like I live in Los Angeles, so it's a little easier for me to avoid Amazon in many cases than it maybe is for someone in a rural area. But that someone in a rural area might be able to grow a lot of food, and I can't do that. I don't really have much space to grow food, and I actually screwed up my tomato plants. I'm a little sensitive about that. I don't want to talk about it, but yeah. So I always just say, do the best you can with your circumstance. That's all well and good. Here's what else you can do. You can go to antitrustvotenow.com. That's antitrustvotenow.com. And you can sign the petition. And if some of you have been following along since Antitrust Summer and you're thinking, Ron, I already signed on. Well, this is a new demand that demands a vote right now, because Chuck Schumer has been promising a vote on this since at least June, and he has not delivered. Now, Chuck Schumer also has a daughter who's a lobbyist for Amazon. That might have something to do with it. Go figure. But these bills do have bipartisan support. They do have what it takes to pass. And it is really good antitrust legislation. I know you might be thinking, gee, can we really trust antitrust legislation, coming from these folks? And it's like, well, yeah, we can, because the last piece of really good antitrust legislation that we had in this country happened in the 80s, and it happened under frickin' Reagan. It was when AT&T was broken up. So sometimes you can still get good policy through if you fight hard enough for it. So go to antitrustvotenow.com. What these bills do is it stops a lot of what you talked about. It stops Amazon from prioritizing their goods and services over everyone else when you're just searching for a good. Because what they do, they harvest your data, they find out what people like, then they make generic versions of the stuff that people like, and the stuff you're actually looking for, they bury it in the results on like the 3rd or 4th page that you're not going to go to. So then they get all the business. Google does the same thing when it comes to web traffic. They scrape data off of other pages, and then they just show all of their stuff first. This is completely unethical. It should be illegal. It's not the democratizing part of the internet. This isn't what the internet's supposed to be. It's not what made the internet great in the first place. So we need to pass this legislation, because, we can either have the internet of the future, where it's this amazing superhighway of information, this amazing tool that has limitless potential, or it can continue to descend in the surveillance capitalistic hellscape that it's descending into. And I'd rather have the former. So we got to fight for it. So please, antitrustvotenow.com. It takes less than 40 seconds to sign. It goes to all of your officials. We got to be so loud that they can't ignore this one.
Absolutely. And here's the website here. When you go to the website, it asks for your phone number and your zip code, and then you just select call here. And I want to point out some of the antitrust supporters. Believe it or not, guys, Patreon is on here. Patreon and Spotify is also on here, and so is Yelp. So there's a lot of supporters for this. We got to do something about this, because it's becoming a problem. Like, it's going to get to the point where, and I've heard this from other people as well, some people have told me in their town, per se, they have to work at the Amazon warehouse because they're the only ones hiring. So it's going to get to the point where it's almost like the Empire. I don't know if you're into Star Wars or not, Ron.
Of course I
It's
am. I'm not. I'm not like a connoisseur though. Sometimes when I talk Star Wars, and I don't know what level like you're at. Like I don't know, but sometimes when I talk Star Wars with like really big like Star Wars, like yeah, they're into it. I kind of just feel like I'm like, okay, I'm not in your league. I mean, I did not care for the prequels, but episodes 7, 8, and 9, I enjoyed them. You know, I know other Star Wars connoisseurs that's not cool if you like, but I liked it. I enjoyed the Obi-Wan series. I enjoyed the Boba Fett. The Baby Yoda thing I thought was a little cheesy, but it grew on me. So some of the more diehard Star Wars people that shun all that stuff, I'm not as cool as them, but I enjoy it. I don't love the fact that it's under Disney's umbrella, but I mean, you know, again, these mergers, no one's freaking stopping them. So
yeah, it just this is kind of reminding me of the Empire, where like, and for those who don't know, in Star Wars, like it's kind of like you either work for the Empire, you're a part of that, or you're kind of a target.
Yeah.
Basically. It's just like eventually what is going to happen here? Is everybody going to be working for Amazon?
Oh jeez.
Like just imagine, right? Like who are they going to buy next? Who are they going to buy next?
I mean, it's like it really is when you look at what this guy Jeff Bezos is all about. It is a plot line from a comic book movie. I mean, he is really just. I mean, he flies around in his rocket that literally looks like a dick. I don't know. I mean, that's proof that he doesn't really have any friends. No, but he has all the money in the world. He gets this space rocket that clearly looks like a penis. And none of his buddies were like, that looks like you're going to be flying around in a penis. And it's like, you kind of look like Dr. Evil. Enough people still remember that movie. Don't do that. Get a different shaped spaceship. But he's like, no, I'm going to go in my penis rocket that I'm going to land. And it's and then just what he's trying to do. I mean, he has a newspaper. He has Whole Foods. He has I mean, the only thing he hasn't really like tried to directly get into quite yet is like water, but they're already trading water on Wall Street. So it's just a matter of time before he does something warped and dystopian there too. And now he's getting into healthcare, or he's trying to at least, but it looks like no one's going to stop that one. So yeah, I mean, it's disturbing. Like this guy, I mean, we might be reaching a point where he's just going to declare himself emperor. And if you look at the way he treats his employees, he ain't going to be a benevolent one. So
that's right. That's right. There's a question for you here, Ron, from Casey. Ron, do you think Walmart will sell out to Amazon?
Wow. That's I mean, Walmart still has a lot of money and a lot of power, but that's a fantastic question, because I mean, I think to get to Walmart's level or Jeff Bezos's level, like it's just you have to have a certain amount of sociopathy. Like you just do, because it's like they have more wealth than they could ever use, than their children could ever use, than their children could ever use, than their children's children's children could ever use. And there's no way you acquire that amount of wealth ethically or anywhere close to it. If you properly compensated all the people who helped you get that amount of wealth, you would still be very rich, but you wouldn't be a freaking billionaire. It just would not happen. So, I mean, who's the bigger psychopath? I don't know. That's tough to say. I mean, I feel like this would be like, it'd be like the Hound and his brother going at it one last time, for anyone who watched Game of Thrones. But I could see some kind of a merger there, like between because it's like he wants to get into brick and mortar, like physical. Like they're already having those Amazon store locations that are separate from Whole Foods. Well, who has more retail space than Walmart? Nobody. So, I mean, I could see him making an offer, and I think if the price is right, they'd go for it. Because no matter what they do, they're never going to catch up to him. So I think the Walton family, if the price is right, they would just say, sure. So I guess, I mean, the short answer to your question that I did not take a short time to answer is yeah, I could see that. I think it's possible. I think we may live in a world where there's two streaming options. You either get Musk Music or Bezos Bucks streaming now. Or, well, he'll keep the name. It'll still be Amazon Prime.
Wow. Did you guys know that Walmart is going to start a bank? I did not know that.
I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised. You know what so I've not been inside of a Walmart for quite a long time, but back in the day, like when I was on the road full time, I toured a lot with this guy who he liked Walmart. It was actually, our friendship was very interesting because we were very different politically, but we'd have like these awesome conversations actually. And he's a really good guy. We're still friends, but we would go on the road together a lot, and he would occasionally cash checks at a Walmart. And it was just, I mean, they would list this like stock information for their employees, and they would list like all these things on using your money and stuff like that. And they would like allow people to cash checks. And this was, I mean, maybe 2014 or so. And even then I was just like, this place is like, there's way too much shit going on here. Like there's just way too much going on under this roof. And this is disturbing. So I'm not surprised at all they would start a bank. And I'm sure it's not going to be a credit union or anything like that. I'm sure it's going to be, let's get involved in some oil bank.
Right. You know what I'm really worried about in reference to Jeff Bezos as well. So for people who don't know, he does own the Washington Post now. So he has his hand in at least print journalism. What happens if he wants to get involved in broadcast media? What if he wants to start to buy like how, you know, Vanguard and BlackRock, how they're shareholders? What if he wants to get involved in broadcast media? Could you imagine what the narrative would be like?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you just imagine the Post times 11. I mean, the Washington Post, I mean, there's certain things that they won't really, certain lines that they won't really cross. I mean, one being that, like, they're just corporate media, but another being it's like, you know, it's obvious that the guy in charge is Jeff Bezos. I mean, you know, they're never going to talk about the deal he has with the CIA. They're never going to bring that up. You know, they're never going to bring up, I mean, I would challenge anyone. I mean, I can't say for sure that it doesn't exist, but I doubt it does. Good luck finding an article about this merger on Washington Post, or at least an article that's critical of this merger. So they got the NFL too. Shit. Jeez.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. He's putting his hands in everything.
What deal do they have with the NFL?
Who knows? But the NFL has no problem selling out, though.
Well, hell yeah. They were a nonprofit for the longest time. They were able to operate as a nonprofit, which proves there's way too many freaking loopholes in our laws, go figure. And yeah, they were just this ethical nonprofit, the NFL. Yeah, and that was after they sold out to the military-industrial complex to be like, oh, is enrollment low? We'll just make war rallies out of our video game or out of our games. I don't know. I'm a hockey guy, so.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. I just feel like there's no stopping. And it's not just Amazon, it's also Google, you know, Google owning YouTube. And you have to look out for companies like them as well. Facebook also owns other companies. Some people may not realize this, but Facebook owns Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
So
well, and they've been particularly repulsive as of recent, especially in a post-Roe v. Wade society. I mean, they were intercepting direct messages of people in states where there wasn't a lot of access to healthcare, like people trying to figure out how to get abortions. They've been intercepting those messages and sending them directly to law enforcement. So, I mean, Facebook has been particularly ridiculous as of recent, even more ridiculous than usual. So again, hey folks, antitrustvotenow.com. There's legislation out there that will start to break up these big tech behemoths, because you see what happens when we allow it to continue to go down this way.
That's right. Somebody needs to step in here. And I thought at one point, didn't they come after Bill Gates for this years ago? They tried to say that Microsoft technically was a monopoly or was heading in that direction because they owned Windows?
I think so. I don't remember all of the details on that, but I do kind of remember something like that happening. I mean, again, the last true legit antitrust legislation we had was back in the 80s with AT&T. And that was very revolutionary because before then, and Sabby, I think you and I probably both remember, well, I know I remember this in my childhood, and I'd imagine you do in yours too. Like, we remember the days when like a long distance phone call cost like an arm and a leg and the blood of your firstborn. So you would be like I had cousins that lived in a different state, and like my parents, like they pretty much had a timer. They'd be like, all right, say hi to your cousin, then get off the phone, get off the phone, get off the phone. Because it cost like $1 million for a freaking long distance call. Well, that's not the case anymore. And why isn't it the case? Well, obviously technology has changed, but when it stopped being the case, even before that technology changed, it was because they broke up AT&T. So all of a sudden, more people got in the long distance calling game. So it got a lot cheaper because they were, bloating up the prices. And then we got more inventions like the answering machine and the modem, which helped lead to the World Wide Web as we know it today. So when you compare that to what's going on now, we don't really know the potential the internet has. We don't know what a post YouTube world's going to look like, what a post Google world's going to look like. And we're never going to find out if we don't break up some of these behemoths. There can be an internet beyond Amazon. It can exist. We're never going to know unless we start breaking these things up. And I want to see a future where people remember Amazon.com the way they remember the phone book. That's what I want to see. I don't want to see the future where it's still like the big man on campus.
That's right. I mean, it's just, I don't know. I mean, it's Amazon, it's Google, it's Disney. Disney owns a lot of companies too.
Disney, yeah.
Because Disney also owns ESPN. I don't know if people realize that. It's random.
I know that because of hockey. That's the only reason I know that. I wouldn't have known that otherwise.
Yeah, it's just like something has to be done because it's going to get to the point where we're not going to be able to compete. Especially small businesses are not going to be able to compete. All of these retail stores that I constantly see going out of business, multiple ones that used to be incredibly popular, like the Gap, they're closing all over the place. They just can't compete with Amazon. Target could be next. Who knows? Amazon, they may want to say, oh, we want to buy up Target too. And I think it was a huge mistake for the CEO of Whole Foods to sell that to Amazon. Whole Foods is supposed to be high quality groceries. They claim that they have a separate farm. So the food is grown, differently. It's supposed to be organic. And you let Amazon come in and take over that?
Yeah. Well, the CEO is like kind of like a big right-wing jerk, isn't he? Like hasn't he gotten shots? He said ridiculous stuff like a bunch of times, and everybody, because like a bunch of years ago, everyone was just like, I'm such a responsible consumer shopping at Whole Foods. Look at me. And then it's like, no, this guy's a big jerk, and this is just like another corporate thing. I mean, I understand like they make, certain products available, and if that's the only place you can get them, that's fine. Like, do what you got to do. But I don't know. I'm glad. I am thankful I live in a place where there's like a lot of farmers markets and stuff available, so I can get my produce that way. And it's like, it's better for you and you feel better and blah, blah, blah. But yeah, I mean, it's not just the brick and mortars too. It's all the online vendors. Like they can't compete because first of all, you need to be on Amazon. If you're like an online vendor doing whatever, you pretty much have to be on Amazon. You don't really have a choice. And then Amazon screws you. They like hide you in the search results. They like push you down so it's like, or they'll make generics of your products and you can't do anything about it. So it's like, I mean, it's really a monopoly-esque situation. And then they screw you over in the App Store too, because they charge you these exorbitant commissions. Like Apple does that. So this antitrust legislation starts breaking this stuff up, and it is just so overdue and needed. And it's, and this just goes to like the whole funny thing when people say things like, well, capitalism breeds innovation. Like, look, these mergers are terrible. This is like the opposite of anything resembling innovation. I mean, you brought up the Disney ESPN thing. So a couple years ago, And I know this is a small drop in the bucket compared to the real ales of the world, but this just goes to that point. The NHL had a very nice app that was the NHL app. And it allowed you to pick your favorite teams, and you could hide all the scores in case you wanted to watch a game after the fact. As a guy who lives in California, but his team's the Pittsburgh Penguins, an East Coast team, this was an awesome perk. I gotta say, I loved it, and it was reasonably priced, and it was my birthday gift to myself every year, and it was a nice thing. I like to unwind with a hockey game. That's my break, folks. Well, Disney freaking ruined that. They took it away. They put the hockey on ESPN Plus, and ESPN Plus doesn't give a shit. They don't give a shit about the game. They don't give a shit about the fans. So it's just this like super inadequate bullshit streaming thing. So they ruined it. They just ruined it. So yeah, none of these mergers like spawn innovation. It does the opposite. It kills anything remotely good.
That's true. And then other people can't compete. Same thing with YouTube, actually. There's been multiple platforms that have come out, but they still cannot compete with YouTube because YouTube is attached to Google. So people we're all so conditioned to go to YouTube, but like a lot of us are on multiple platforms like Rockfin, Rumble, Odyssey, but most people tend to navigate right back towards YouTube, and it's hard to compete with that.
Yeah, well, the thing is like, people have to realize how Wall Street really works. What's up, Jay? Jay Buffont's in the chat. Dude, Jay. I was just on his show earlier this week. They, like, you are competing, quote unquote, with, like, these entities that have unlimited runway. And I mean runway in, like, the finance sense. Like, they have all this capital, all this money. They're never going to fricking run out. Facebook is never going to run out of money. Google is never going to run out of money. Amazon is never going to run out of money. And so even if you have some like, startup hedge fund investments behind you, which most people don't, but even if you do, they're only going to give you so much because, Wall Street is a billion or bust industry. So unless like they'll give you some runway for however much time, maybe a couple years or whatever. And if you don't somehow overtake Facebook or Google or Amazon, they're done with you because then you're not worthy of their portfolio of assets. So, it's not a level playing field or anything close to it. And we need some antitrust legislation at this, but we needed it yesterday. So again, folks, antitrustvotenow.com. Please, please, please sign up.
Awesome. And there's one more question for you, Ron. Thank you for the super chat, Meteor Dreams. Question for you, Ron. Are you still a branch Covidian?
I don't know what that means. So
I don't either.
I have no idea what that means. Yeah. I don't know what that means. So,
sorry, Meteor Dreams.
Yeah, good question. But I have no idea what that means.
All right, Ron. I want to be respectful of your time, but before you go, anything that you have coming up and anything that you want to promote?
Yeah, well, let folks know that I'll be announcing 2023 tour dates soon. I don't think I'll be on the road at all much for the rest of this year, but I'll be announcing 2023 tour dates soon. And my short film Loner is going to be played at a couple select shows, so I'm excited for that. It's a pilot that I did, but I just say short film because more people kind of connect with that. So that's going to be shown. That is finished now. And if you want to check it out immediately, you can join my Patreon for a Give What You Can level. You get all kinds of cool stuff, and you can watch that film. And I'm going to be working on my movie. And yeah, those are the main things. Follow me on Twitter at Ron Placone, YouTube Ron Placone, all the socials Ron Placone. Twitter's where I'm the most active. And yeah, antitrustvotenow.com.
Oh, do you have there's one more question, I think. Roger has a question here on Rockfin. Thank you so much for the tip, Roger Meadows. Ron, I support breakups except when it comes to my favorite music groups, but I'm past antitrust. I'm on some ownership/operation at every level of government shit of essential services. John Mackey, Whole Foods guy, is libertarian. Microsoft was about pushing Netscape Navigator, the first premier web browser. Oh my God, I remember that. Both IE and NN or CDs you had to install. Once Gates saw the value in the www, he said, I'll just have my browser pre-installed and shut Netscape Navigator out. That is what started the antitrust suit. Thank you so much for that, Roger.
Oh yeah, I remember that. So he was like just automatically installing stuff on people's PCs, and I guess they were mostly desktops at the time. Yeah, I mean, I hear you, but you know, the truth of the matter is, like, you got to start breaking these companies up. I mean, you got to start there. It doesn't have to be either or; it should be both. And if you don't start breaking up big tech, I mean, everybody says like big tech, and they're right.
Yeah.
Well, this is how we start breaking them up. I mean, you know, you need to have some policy, and otherwise, it's like, how else would you break them up? Like, there is no other way, really. Like, they have so much money, so much power. Like, that's the only way you could start to chip away at all that. So,
that's right. That's right. Well, Ron, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me. Always a pleasure. I'll see you again soon, I hope.
Alrighty.
All
Bye.
right. Peace.
All right, guys. Welcome. I don't know why I look a little orange today. I think it's the lighting. I don't know what's happening here. Anywho, we have some great stories we're going to talk about tonight. I want to give a quick shout out to everyone who is a Sabby patron. Shout out, guys. If you are interested in being a Sabby patron, I have 5 categories: members, Sabby, Sabsters, Sabinators, and of course, the ultimate. All of their names are listed here. Thank you guys so much again for your support. And you can also see their names scrolling across the bottom of the screen there on the ticker. And I believe I shouted out Sylvia Ross already, so I'll have to put that up at the top with the rest of the peeps. And let's go ahead and get into my thumbnail so we can see the stories that we're going to talk about tonight. Good things coming up. Here we go. So tonight we are discussing Cenk Uygur defund fail. What did Cenk Uygur say about defunding the police? Yikes. We're going to get into that story. It should be pretty interesting. I'm also going to discuss Denver UBI. This is important, guys. More, cities are trying to test out universal basic income. In particular, they're also trying to address the homeless issue in Denver. So we're going to get into that. I'm also going to discuss the railroad strike. There's an update on that this morning. And of course, Ron Placone was just here. So let me go ahead and we'll get into the stories. I think I do have a couple of chats here really quick. Dorothea says Amazon is what is due to the legal framework of business in the U.S. Therefore, I think the U.S. is within its right to take over and run Amazon. # nationalize monopolies. That's an interesting point. Thank you for the super chat, a kid. Sabby, salute. You killed it on the Hill. Thank you so much. Thanks, a kid. Thanks. Yeah, for those who haven't seen, I was on Rising yesterday morning. We talked about AOC's GQ cover and whether or not we think that she can win the presidency. So that was an interesting discussion. Definitely check that out. Shout out to Byron for this super chat. I remember Bezos had them disassemble a historic bridge in Rotterdam. If that's not emperor moves, I don't know what is. Keep up the good fight, Sabby. Thank you so much, Byron. That is scary. Ray, government sued Microsoft. I think it was for Internet Explorer being attached to Windows so closely. I think you're right, Ray. Robert, capitalism, you can't control it. It was chained down for a while, but its allure is too damn strong for the sociopaths. JB says his power's back on. Whoop, 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 whoop. And shout out to Terry Hinton for the super sticker. Let's go ahead and get started with our first story here. And that is the railroad strike. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I miss that? Whoopsie. Oh, thank you for the tip on Rockfin, Dave. Good to be here. Nice to see Sabby and Ron. Thank you so much for that, Dave. Railroad strike. What's happening? Why could it happen? And what is the recent update that came out this morning? So before we get into the actual strike possibility and this morning's update, I actually want to get started with the reason why railroad workers were actually thinking about striking in the first place. You need to really hear this, because when you hear what they're going to say in this video, I think some of you are going to be wanting to pull your hair out about the working conditions that they've had to deal with. Listen to this.
The impact of a railroad strike across the industry, it would be like asking what would be the results if a nuclear bomb went off in New York. Obviously, it would be utter chaos and catastrophe. It seems intentional, like the railroad industry is intentionally trying to create an oppressive work environment so that they can reach their end goal and be able to give more money back to Wall Street.
These workers have worked now for the last 3 years throughout a pandemic, putting themselves and their families at risk without a raise. They have not received any pay increase during that time. At the same time, they've seen their numbers dwindle dramatically. They've also seen the highest profits in the history of railroading over that same stretch of time.
They want.
So that's important to note what he just said there. Over the past 3 years, they have not received a raise. But CEOs have received raises, and we've talked about that before on this show, that CEOs actually doubled their wealth during the pandemic. But you see, the workers weren't even given raises in this country. Let's go on.
More with less, and that comes down to people, resources, locomotives, maintenance, everything.
Railroads have laid off 45,000 people in the past 5 years. That means that they are completely incapable of meeting the demand that is placed on our economy.
Just on duty time, you are very commonly working 80 plus hours a week. That does
80 plus hours a week. That's the minimum. The 80 is the minimum. So imagine working 80 hours a week in the United States of America.
not include the time that you're sitting at the away from home terminal. I mean, you might be away from home, subject to the railroad, not with your family, for 120 hours in a week. On these long runs like we have, where you're on the train consistently 10, 11, 12 hours, it is not realistic for a human being to be by themselves. There's no gas station to stop at to get a cup of coffee when you're nodding off, when you're getting tired. You can't get up and stretch your legs. Let's say the boards are exhausted the way they are, and you think you're going to work at 6 in the morning. No, there's a shortage of people. You end up getting called to work at 1 in the morning.
So he just said, I want to round this back just a little bit here about the time going into work. Listen to this.
And you think you're going to work at 6 in the morning. No, there's a shortage of people. You end up getting called to work at 1 in the morning.
Imagine if you have a family. Imagine if you have kids. I just couldn't. How do you do this? If you're supposed to go to work at 6 o'clock in the morning, they call you in at 1. So it also sounds like with these positions, these are on-call positions. So if they call you to come in because they have a shortage of workers, you're expected to be there. Just imagine. Just imagine.
When you're tired, you haven't gotten any sleep, you've tossed and turned, and then they expect you to be on a train for 12 hours by yourself. We used to be paid an above average salary because we work an above average lifestyle where we are gone holidays, weekends, but the way inflation is devaluing our purchasing power, that's not really the case anymore. you might only be making like $26 an hour gross when you consider the time that you were on the train, the time after your hours of service expired that you're sitting there in a siding, the time sitting in a hotel up to 16 hours without pay, and the fact that you're having to pay for those meals out of pocket.
Okay, this part right here, paying for meals out of pocket. Now, typically with most companies, this is how it should work. If you are having to pay for food while you are doing your job, technically the company should at minimum reimburse you for those meals. And I know this because when I waited tables, there were people that would come in, they were there on business, right? So they would come in and they'd have like their business credit card. They would tell me if they got alcohol to put that on a separate ticket because the company wouldn't pay for alcohol, just food. So I remember all of this, right? So some people will have a business credit card. And then there are some companies where you may not have a business credit card, but you need to save all of your receipts. And when you get back to work, they'll reimburse you for all those meals. The way I see it, if they are working, and obviously they have to eat at some point, Amtrak should be paying for those meals. They can afford to do it. That's the way I see it. Or they should at least reimburse them, because that can get expensive depending on which town you're stopped in.
The sacrifice that we make is not being compensated. In this round of contract negotiations, I believe railroad workers as a whole want four things: an increase in their pay, they want to keep their health insurance, they want the ability to take time off when they're sick, when they need time with their family without being subject to an oppressive attendance policy. And
okay, this part right here. Oh, let him finish and I'll go back to it.
We don't want to be forced to one-man crews the way that.
None of this sounds ridiculous to me. They want a pay increase. Remember, they have not received a raise in the past 3 years. They want to be able to keep their same health insurance. And this goes back to the reason why we need Medicare for all in this country, because again, we have no control over our employer changing the health insurance plan. That is their domain. We have no control over that. So if they change it and your health insurance premium increased more than it was before, you kind of just have to suck it up. That's just how it works, because we don't have like a Medicare for all system in this country. Your insurance is tied to your employer, and that's the problem with that. The next item they have on this is a fair attendance policy. And he mentioned being able to have sick time to take off from work if you're sick, which everyone should be able to do that. But there are many companies in this country that don't offer any type of sick pay. We have no guaranteed sick pay for people in the United States. For those of us that have waited tables before, we didn't have any sick days or sick pay. If you got sick, you didn't get paid. That's how it worked. So then what happens when you're in that position? People who are sick, they'll push themselves to come to work anyway because they need the money, because they don't get sick pay. And last but not least, no one-man crews. If you are traveling for 12 hours, I 100% agree with that. There should be someone else there with you. What if you get tired? What if you have to take a break? Like, what do you do? I don't find any of these requests to be unreasonable.
The railroad wants to cram it down our throat.
So Joe Biden has come in, just giving you an update, has come in trying to prevent them from going on strike, because this would affect supply chain. And that's important. And this goes into the part about the general strike. So I'm gonna get into that in just a second, because one thing that we did mention, we had a general strike summit last year at RBN. If you really want a general strike in this country, you need to shut down transportation. You need to shut down the ports. If they are to go on strike, that would shut down significant amount of transportation of goods and services. So if they shut that down, yeah, we would feel it. We would feel it. So what happens? Joe Biden knows that, right? So he's like, wait a minute, we can't have that happen. Let me jump in and intervene. This is why I say this is one of the most effective ways to put pressure on politicians, to put pressure on the United States government, is with your labor. But you have to do it the right way. And don't get me wrong, going on strike, you do what you got to do. But if you're going on strike at like Whole Foods, for example, or if you're going on strike at GameStop, for example, that is not going to hurt the economy the way that going on strike as a railroad worker would. That would devastate supply chain. So I've seen the demands and I know what the deal is that's being offered to them. I think it's BS. I think they should be asking for more. But notice how the president acted immediately. We actually have more power than we realize when we work together in numbers. There is strength in numbers. This is where we have that power, is with our labor. Let's go back in.
They will hear the arguments from both the railroads and the unions about what their asks are and what they think is important. They will evaluate the underlying economic circumstances, the state of the industry, and they'll come up with what they believe is a reasonable resolution to this contract dispute, and they will have their recommendation. At that point, there will be another 30-day cooling off period where the parties hopefully will be able to negotiate off of what the recommendation is. When the cooling off period extends, then the parties will be released, so they would be free to engage in a work action. That would mean, potentially a lockout or a strike.
I definitely believe that railroad workers this time around are ready to strike.
I think people are waking up to how important the supply chain is to their daily lives. I mean, that became very clear when we had these big slowdowns and we had empty storefronts, and that was.
See, this is what I'm talking about. This is how you really fight back. You have to affect the supply chain. And a company like Amazon, and I had said this last year, let's boycott Amazon. We could all do that, but that still would not have the effect that something like this would have.
It's based on underperformance, but no performance would have bigger impacts across the board.
Imagine how bad the backlog would be if the railroad shut down for a week's time. Just a week. It would be enough that store shelves would be empty.
See?
These people do not even care whether there's a railroad industry in 10 years. I care. I have wanted to be an engineer my entire life. I mean, even as a kindergarten, I remember I wanted to be an engineer. I want there to be a freight railroad 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, 100 years from now. It seems like essentially these Wall Street cronies are intentionally destroying the industry to absorb as much profit as they can out of it until they've picked it dry and all the blood's gone, and then they can just let it fall.
If we want to actually start fixing the supply chain, if we want to have real solutions to how do we fix our supply chain and make sure that we're more competitive and that we are meeting the needs of our economic system, we need to give these workers the contract they deserve, because that's the only way we're going to be able to rebuild this system and make it more effective and make it more efficient, more productive for our country.
Shout out to More Perfect Union for that video. They said, shut it down. This right here could be the stepping stone to a general strike in this country. Can you imagine what would happen? Think about who would join them. If they went on strike, then you may have the airlines looking around like, you know what? I think we're going to go on strike too. Then you have other people, other companies decide, well, you know what? We're going to go on strike too. That's how you get things moving for a general strike. Now, there has been an update this morning, and I do want to get into that. Let's go ahead and share this article here. Railroad strike averted after marathon talks reached tentative deal. So it's tentative. So just keep that in mind as we go through this. Unions and management reached a tentative deal early Thursday, averting a freight railroad strike that had threatened to cripple U.S. supply chains and push prices higher for many goods. The deal, with the unions representing more than 50,000 engineers and conductors, was announced just after 5 a.m. in a statement from the White House, which called it an important win for our economy and American people. A verbal agreement between two sides was reached about 2:30 a.m. That concluded about 20 hours of talks between the union leadership and railroad labor negotiators hosted by Labor Secretary Marty Walsh. For those who are not aware, Marty Walsh was my former mayor here in Boston. He tends to be very much pro-labor. And then he went off and took this job with Joe Biden, which so many things I could say. But let's go back in. They begin their meeting Wednesday morning with the clock ticking down to a strike that had been set to start at 12:01 a.m. on Friday. President Joe Biden called in personally. You see what I mean? He called in personally to talk to negotiators around 9 p.m. on Wednesday. Now, that's according to a person familiar with negotiations. Biden stressed that catastrophic harm could come to families, businesses, and communities if the rail system shut down. And I want to go ahead and let you know, and if that were to happen, that would not be good for Joe Biden. Because I would like to see the poll numbers after something like that happen. Would not be good for him at all. Sources within the unions were giving Biden's call credit for helping to get the deal completed without a strike. So they're already giving him credit here. We're very proud of what we accomplished. That's coming from the president of Conductors Union. He thanked Biden and Labor Department officials involved in the talks for the deal. Everybody pulled together to make sure that we could get our members what they deserved. And it goes on here to say, this was the speech here from Biden. You've reached an agreement that will keep our critical rail system working and avoid disruptions of our economy. I'm grateful. This agreement is validation of what I've always believed. Unions and management can work together for the benefit of everyone. And here's the problem that I have with this, because a lot of people are applauding Joe Biden for this. The problem is it should have never gotten to this point to begin with. That's the problem. Should have never gotten to this point. This has been going on for years. So again, you have companies exploiting the workers, mistreating the workers, not paying them what they should be paid. How do you not give out raises for 3 years? And the cost of living has increased, especially this year with inflation. How do you not give out raises to these people? So it should have never happened in the first place. So Joe Biden stepping in and people applauding him, yay, congratulations. No, it should have never gotten to this point, guys. That's the problem. More people are applauding Joe Biden for jumping in instead of pointing fingers at the company for mistreating the workers like this for years. That's what should be happening. They should be livid with the company the way that they have been mistreating the workers. And I'd say I wanted them to go on strike. That's right. I wanted them to strike. Because I told you before, this is more powerful than voting for a congressperson. This is more powerful than voting for a senator. This is more powerful than voting for the president of the United States. Something like this and this kind of pressure. Do you know what we could have been asking for if they went through with this strike? You know, the list of demands that we could have. I think when I look at what they were asking for, I think that wasn't enough. While you have the president's attention, let's throw in some other things too. Let's go ahead and say, you know what? We want Medicare for all. Oh, since we are away from our family members for so long, we want to make sure that we have free pre-K for kids in this country. What? Someone has to watch our kids. We're on call. We want to make sure that everyone is able to have a living wage in this country. You see how you add in these demands? So I always say when you're doing negotiations, you always ask for more than what you want. This goes with job salaries as well. If you're interviewing and you're trying to make a salary offer, you always ask for more than what you actually want, because they're going to come back with you and negotiate, and they're going to try to talk you down from what you originally are asking for. So if you come in with the bare minimum, and I told you what they're asking for, they should have been asking for a lot more. If you come in with the bare minimum, they'll just say, okay, done. You always ask for more. Always. Now let's go back in. Now it says the deal needs to be ratified by union members before it can go into effect and totally end the threat of a strike. But it's good news for a wide range of businesses that depend upon the freight railroads to continue to operate. About 30% of the nation's freight moves by rail. So it says here, a win for workers, railroads, and the economy. Is it really a win for the workers? The deal gives the union members an immediate 14% raise with back pay dating back to 2020. Raises totaling 24% during the 5-year life of the contract that runs from 2020 through 2024. It also gives them cash bonuses of $1,000 a year. All told, the back pay and earlier bonuses will give union members on average $11,000 payment per person once the deal is ratified. But does that give them back that time with their family? No, it doesn't. Let me give you some money so you can hush up and go away. Let's give them some money so they'll be quiet and let them hush up and go away. That's not enough. After what they've been through, they should have been giving them more. Goes back in. Few other details of the deal have so far been made public, but the statement from Biden indicated that the major sticking point involving work rules and scheduling issues that had brought the country within a day of its first national rail strike in 30 years had been addressed in the union's favor. So he goes on to say it's a win for tens of thousands of rail workers who worked tirelessly through the pandemic to ensure that America's families and communities got deliveries of what have kept us going during these difficult years. But in the video that I just played for you, the gentleman told you they've thought about going on strike before. This isn't the first time. So they've just been mistreated for a long time. These rail workers will get better pay, improved working conditions, and peace of mind around their healthcare costs. And so again, I want to highlight here, because we already talked about the pay, improved working conditions. What are the improved working conditions? I want details. What are they? He goes on to say peace of mind around their healthcare cost. We wouldn't have to worry about this if we had Medicare for all. This is the problem. He goes on to say all hard earned. They had to earn it, huh? Not enough. Not enough. So it says the dispute was about staffing shortages and scheduling rules that union leaders said had brought their membership to a breaking point. The unions say the railroads have been requiring their members to be on call and ready to report to work on short notice as often as 7 days a week. This should have never happened. That is a huge problem. What do you do if you have a kid? How do you find someone to babysit your kid when they tell you to come in at 1 o'clock in the morning, which was just mentioned in that video? Who's going to watch your kid at 1 o'clock in the morning? What if your other spouse is working at night? Who do you find last minute to watch your kid? This should have never happened. It is an exploitive system. A lot of people have been taken advantage of. Let's be real. It's not like this is the first possible strike that we've been hearing about. We've been hearing about labor issues for years. And yes, they did get worse during the pandemic, but this is what is happening in a capitalist society. This is the problem. Capitalism allows for exploitation of the workers. The people at the top make all the money, keep it to themselves, and they give the people below just enough to get by. No time with their family members, long hours, on call. You should not have to, how can I say it? Work should not be your life. That's basically what they were doing. Their life was just work. And if you go to other countries, you don't see people working like this. You don't. You just don't. When I lived in Germany, people were taking like 2-hour lunch breaks. You don't see people working like this. This is why they tend to be healthier sometimes in some of the European countries. This is why they don't have as many health issues. Also, they have healthcare for everybody because they're not working people to death. Welcome to America. So there was a poll. And Eric, let me know when you have that poll up, because the point that I was trying to make is that this actually, if this strike were to happen, this could have been the perfect segue into a general strike in this country. This is how you make it happen. You start with transportation, you get the railroad workers, and then you can get the airline employees. And if you shut both of them down, the president has no choice but to give the people something. That's how you do it. Here's the poll. So the question was, do you support a general strike? 95% of you said yes. 3% said no. Who's the 3%? And 3% said not sure. But the majority of you said yes. I feel like it's the only thing we got left. I really do. You can't rely on electoral politics. The politicians are doing you wrong. They run on one thing and then they get in office and then whoops, don't remember that. Can't rely on that. They're not going to save you. So this is really the most effective way to shut it down. Hopefully one day we'll get there. I'm going to go to some of the comments and we'll get to the next story. Joe OWS, just call out for one day, sit down, strike across the nation, then try for a week, then a month. They'll come around to our way of thinking and call for dialogue. Sarah says, if they strike, we all need to join. It would only take a few days. That's right. Because we're talking about shutting down supply chain. They wouldn't have to be on strike for like a month or 10 months like the nurses here in Massachusetts. They wouldn't have to be on strike that long. E. Mayim, thanks for exposing me to that video, Sabs. You're welcome. Bill, my bar is so much lower than a general strike at this point. I would love to see online leftists unionize even a single place of employment to start with. Just one. That's right. That's a good one. That's a good one. Thank you for the super chat, Delthea. These grievances sound like modern day equivalents to the grievances the Pullman porters had 100 years ago. Railroads just won't stay right. No industry will, not without structural change. Boom. JB is in the chat. A general strike would force Biden's hand to do what we want, even if he doesn't want to do it. Boom. This would be the perfect opportunity to say, no, I don't really trust the company's healthcare plan. I want Medicare for all. I want you to give everybody in the country health insurance. Give everybody health care. Perfect opportunity. Always ask for more. We're going to go into our next story, speaking of asking for more, because I don't agree with Andrew Yang on everything, but I do agree with him on a universal basic income. And now, apparently, Denver, Colorado is going to give this a shot. Shout out to K-Study QB for this clip, always doing the damn thing. Let's get into it.
Here in Colorado, the Denver City Council approved a new program this week, hoping it will help solve some of the problem anyway. They're going to use millions of dollars to give certain people money every month. Darius Johnson live in Denver to explain how it's going to work. Darius, good morning.
Hey there, Gary. Good morning to you. You know, they're going to be rolling this out as a pilot program starting in November. And if chosen for the program, you could be one of those people who receive the money for the next year. Now, on Monday, the Denver City Council approved a $2 million contract.
Eric, can you use a volume booster really quick? And I'll run it back. Sorry.
Here in Colorado, the Denver City Council approved a new program this week, hoping it will help solve some of the problem anyway. They're going to use millions of dollars to give certain people money every month. Darius Johnson live in Denver to explain how it's going to work. Darius, good morning.
Hey there, Gary. Good morning to you. You know, they're going to be rolling this out as a pilot program starting in November. And if chosen for the program, you could be one of those people who receive the money for the next year. Now, on Monday, the Denver City Council approved a $2 million contract in partnership with the Denver Basic Income Project. The city will use COVID relief money from the federal government to provide cash assistance for 230 people or families who are experiencing homelessness. 90.
Now, remember, this is a pilot. So they're basically doing a test run. So that's why it's only going to a certain amount of people. They're going to test it out first. And this is actually their way of trying to address the homeless issue in Denver, which we're seeing across multiple cities in the country. Go back just a little bit. There we go.
Families who are experiencing homelessness. 90 of those people will receive $50 a month. 140 will receive $12,000 in universal basic income over the course of a year. And they're going to be splitting that in two ways. First, the first grouper will get $6,000 up front, then $500 over the next 11 months. The city says they're looking to help those who need it most.
This isn't a program that people can call in and sign up for. There's not going to be a wait list or, a way to just sign up online. It's a program that'll be offered to guests of shelter and through an intake and assessment from those shelter providers.
Another thing she also mentioned was during the pandemic, they really saw this group of people suffering. So this is just a buffer, something extra to be able to help many of them move forward. After this program wraps up at the end of next year, the University of Denver Center for Housing and Homeless Research will conduct an evaluation. They'll review housing outcomes, the utilization of shelters and other homeless services, as well as some mental improvements. They'll release those results in 2024, and then that will determine if this program will be able to continue for the years to come, Gary.
Yeah, I've been reading about it a little bit. It's interesting. It's an interesting experiment for sure. They say it's been working pretty good in cities like New York and LA. So we'll see what happens here.
Yeah, here and I already see the comments, and that's why I wanted to play this clip, because if you notice, how is this described, right? Let me go back in. Okay. What does it say here? Denver approves universal basic income, but technically it's not universal. Technically, this is a program to help out those who are homeless. And I'm all for that. But I think they need to be careful with their framing. That's not universal. Now, I do want to point out something they said here about the amount of money. Listen to this.
Receive $12,000 in universal basic income over the course of a year. And they're going to
$12,000 of universal basic income over the course of a year. So that's $1,000 a month. Isn't that exactly what Andrew Yang was proposing when he was running for president? Didn't he say, give everybody $1,000 a month, $12,000? How many of you could use the extra $12,000? How many? Raise your hand. What would you do with that money? What could you do with it? If you got $12,000, you knew you were just guaranteed to get it regardless. Some of you might be able to take that money, pay off back bills, get ahead on your rent, maybe. I don't know. Pay off any other kind of debt that you have, credit card debt, student loan payments. I don't know. But having that extra $12,000, I know that's not like an enormous amount, but what would you do with $12,000? Now, one thing that they did not mention here is whether or not it would be taxed. So I don't know. I wish they would have given more information about that. But it's a test. They're going to test it out. We'll see how it goes. But I want to see if more cities are going to try to do this. If more cities are going to try to do some type of pilot program to see if UBI would actually help people. I don't know. I did see a comment here from Colorado People's News. Got to shout this out. Denver is also going to spend $254 million in housing for the homeless. This is just an admission that have abused people by failing to regulate banks and real estate. 100%. 100%. C. Brass says $12K would change the game for me right now. I'm thinking about what I could do with it. With $12,000, that'd probably go to student loans. It would probably go to student loans, like for me, or I don't know. I wouldn't say get a new car, but I could probably get my car fixed. There's some things that need to be done to my car that I have put off. It still runs. It gets me where I need to go. But there's definitely some things that I've put off. JB said definitely get ahead on rent. See, some people would do that, right? If you have credit card debt, some people will say, let me just pay these credit cards off. It could help. Now, I told you they're trying to address the homeless issue in Denver. That's actually, it seems like that is what has pushed this, right? Listen to this. This is also from Case Study QB. Denver leaders looking for homeless solutions in Houston as they helped 25,000 people get into affordable housing over the past decade. So they're actually looking at a model that has happened in another city, in another state, and they're looking to see how can they apply that for people in Denver. Check this out.
Thank you much for that. Today, leaders from Denver, Aurora, Adams, and Arapahoe counties are going to be heading to Texas to learn about solutions for homelessness. They're going to be visiting Houston. That city has helped some 25,000 people get into affordable housing over the past decade. Colorado's leaders want to see what programs are working there and if anything similar can be done here in Denver. Thank you much for that.
So here's my question. Why aren't more cities trying to do this? Because here's the thing. I can't speak for Colorado. Before a state like Texas, right? Austin has an increasingly growing homeless population. Houston has had this issue. I'm not really sure about Dallas per se, but I know about Austin and Houston. And if you are in an environment where it is 9 times out of 10 for most of the year, it's warmer, right? It may be easier for someone to sleep outside in a state like a Texas than right here in Massachusetts because we have cold winters and they're long. But why aren't more cities doing this? I would like to see Los Angeles do this. I know Los Angeles has a large homeless population. Why isn't Los Angeles trying to implement a universal basic income pilot program just like Denver to see if that can help with the homeless situation there? And don't say everyone that's homeless is on drugs. Everyone that is homeless is not on drugs. How do we fix this problem? Build more homes. Mississippi decided that's how they're going to fix the homeless problem. They're going to build more homes. It's not rocket science. It really isn't. So I saw that, Leah. I saw that, Lewis. Ask Karen Bass. Oh, man. No comment there. I will just say it would be great to see all of these cities working together to fix this issue. That would be great. Los Angeles, San Francisco, working together with Denver, Boston, working together with Denver. We have a homeless issue here too. It's increasing as well. My dad told me a couple of months ago that the homeless population in South Carolina also has been increasing. If you could get these mayors from all of these cities to work together to contact a city like Denver and contact a city like Houston, contact Mississippi and ask them, you guys started building more homes. How did you do this? How is it going? To get people off the street. Because at this point, I don't know what the other solution is. I just don't. I see the homeless population increasing. So we have a poverty issue that is not being fixed. People talk about it, but it's not being fixed. And I like to bring up the poverty issue because that's something that is not being resolved through electoral politics. Not once. It's not being resolved through electoral politics. What president have we had, at least in my lifetime, that has fixed the poverty issue? No one, right? They say that's up to the states. Let the governors handle that in their states. Let the mayor and the governors say, let the mayors handle that in their city. And they just keep passing the buck. They pass it on and on. Problem doesn't get resolved. So what do? When I talked to Shahid Buttar, what did he tell me? He said, there's plenty of homes in San Francisco. Enough homes to house all homeless people. But they can't get into those homes because they don't have the money. It's expensive to live there. At this point, what we have in this country with the homeless situation, at this point, this should not be a Democrat or Republican issue. This is a humanity issue. This is a poverty issue. And regardless if you're Democrat, Republican, Independent, every mayor and every governor should be working together to resolve this issue. If there's anyone in the chat, and let me know, if there's any one of you that are in the chat and you are from another country, but you've been to the United States, how do you feel about the poverty situation here? Sometimes I wonder when people come to the United States for the first time, what they really expect to see. If they think that the US is going to look like Beverly Hills or what they see on television, and then they come here and they see there's a homeless problem here in the United States. I wonder if people abroad are surprised to see that. Saul says, I'm from the Dominican Republic. CEB, I'm from the DR. All right, 2 DRs in the chat. Represent. Yeah, I'm curious. I wonder, what do people think about the United States when they come here for the first time? And they see all the homeless people living under bridges, all these tent communities. If they go to Los Angeles for the first time, do they think Los Angeles looks like Beverly Hills? Do they think that's what all of it looks like? Because it's not. Often wonder. I'll take that comment on Rockfin, Eric. Thank you for the tip on Rockfin, Roger. See, Delthea sees me, Sab. Government taking ownership operation of all essential services and offer universal access, be it Amazon, folding it into the PO, Alphabet, aka Google and YouTube, broadband, and let privatized ISPs offer services beyond access, transportation, like the railroad, but other forms, power and H2O. Also, I forgot to mention, I started listening to Call In last Friday. A half hour late, I rewound and got to hear what Delthea said about the West interview. Take what you need and leave the rest. That's exactly my motto regarding personalities I see on my electric screen. I'm going to take that, use it, but update it to say, take what you need and keep it moving. Sabs, I believe the essence of what you speak of is using something called leverage, like what Tea Party did when it came to debt ceiling, what we thought the squad would use. That's right. Oh, that's what we expected them to do. But when you don't have strength or numbers, then all you have is leverage. Regarding the railroad strike, a number of statements was made in the Presidential Emergency Board report on page 32, I think were made by the carrier representative saying that labor and the workers don't contribute to their profits are the result of investment and risk. And since we don't share in the downside, we shouldn't be expected to share in the upside. End quote. Yes, Sab, demand more. I do not like the framing of the workers saying we are not asking for much, only this and that and the other thing. When I hear those fighting against the powerful say that I want to tear my hair out, why are we always negotiating from a position of weakness, Sabby? Why? We always start from the floor, never the ceiling, and get pulled into the basement. That's right. Max Alvarez, interviewing railroad engineer, mentioned a labor attorney who's done a lot of work in lobbying at the Nevada legislature in addressing a lot of things in labor. The firm he works for now is representing the maintenance rail employees. And he was there at these hearings and said repeatedly about how repulsive it was to sit in that room listening to the disdain CEOs had for their employees. I think there may have been another one too, further up, Eric. Thank you for those tips on Rockfin, Roger. Derek says it's a test set up to fail with those paltry numbers. Jay, it will be taxed when they spend it. We at least know that much. LOL. That's true. That's a good point. JB says Florida has a homeless population over 27,000. See? Zayden, this is capitalism. Resolving homelessness isn't profitable. That's right. You don't make any money off of that. Angela, we have empty homes here where I live that are stacked with garbage from landlords who skip out on garbage bills for their properties that they rent out. We have people sleeping under the bridge. There you go. There needs to be more accountability for these landlords too. Slumlords shouldn't even be a term, but it is because you have them, right? Okay, we're getting into our final story tonight. We need to talk about Cenk Uygur's statement about defunding the police. You know, it's really interesting to me because I've noticed like Cenk Uygur, TYT, they like to point to other people that may have worked with their networker at some time or another. They like to point to those people as right wing now. And I don't think I have to say any names. I think you know what I'm talking about. They like to point to those people as right wing. They're using right wing framing, right wing messaging. But I've seen them do right wing framing when it comes to the police. In fact, here's one right now. So Cenk Uygur tweeted this. Will people who came up with defund the police slogan admit they were wrong? I'm just going to pause there for a second because there's something I got to say about that. Will people who came up with defund the police slogan admit they were wrong? Question. Who were the people? Where did defund the police come from? It came from Black Lives Matter. Now, we can argue about the organization, the money that the organization has taken, and we can argue all about that. And I get that. As an organization, yes, they've turned it into a profit. Totally 100% agree. But predominantly, it was Black people that were a part of that movement asking you to defund the police. So let's put that out there first and keep that in mind when you listen to the rest of his talking point. It was wildly counterproductive framing. You don't speak for the left. Let's highlight this. You don't speak for the left. I just told you guys where it came from. It came from Black Lives Matter. After years of police violence against unarmed Black people, that's what it came from. So this talking point here where he says you don't speak for the left, they weren't trying to speak for the left. They were trying to speak for Black people who were unarmed, who were being killed by the police. Do you guys see the problem with the framing? And I told you back then, this should have never been a left-right issue. That's not how this started. This was a human rights issue. This is a social justice issue. They allowed for politicians to come in, and that's how it was pushed as a left or a liberal issue. This is why you can't have them come in. Whether you're Black Lives Matter, whether you're any other type of grassroots movement, you cannot allow the politicians in DC to come in. They co-opt it, they take a hold of it, and now something that was a social justice issue has now become labeled as a Democrat thing. Let's go on. And neither do people pushing the counterproductive abolish prisons. Again, who are the people? Predominantly, it's mainly Black people. Polls show that almost no one on the left agrees with you. Polls show that almost no one on the left agrees with you. I want to remind you, left and liberal are two different things. Liberals are fine with the status quo. Leftists are not. And I'm telling you that because when he says polls show that almost no one on the left agrees with you, again, this message came from Black Lives Matter. It was Black people, predominantly Black people, asking you to defund the police. The majority of African Americans in the United States are not leftists. They are neoliberals. I'm going to say it again. When we're talking about people who vote, the majority of African Americans in this country who vote are neoliberals, not leftists, not progressives, not socialists, not Marxists. This needs to be distinguished. We need to talk about this. Because I can tell you, as someone who heavily supported Bernie Sanders, someone who went to Bernie Sanders rallies, there weren't that many people that looked like me there. There were more Black people who came out to see Kamala Harris. There were more Black people who came out to see Hillary Clinton. There were more Black people that came out to see Joe Biden. Do you see the problem? He's talking about two different things. He doesn't even know what he's talking about. Going back in, he goes on, believe it or not. You can't claim to speak for the left if polls indicate that actual human beings who are on the left don't like your ideas. In other words, Black people, you can't claim to be on the left. White leftists don't like your ideas. That's really what he's saying. That's really what he is saying. I hope everybody calls this out. You hear me? Do you see it now? And if they like your ideas, but you bungled it by making your ideas sound worse through the names and the framing, then that's you. Do better. In other words, Black people do better. Everyone needs to call this out. This is the problem with the professional managerial class leftists like Cenk Uygur, like Anna Kasparian. This is the problem with them. They're all about left policies and issues until it's something that may affect them. Because let's be real, police don't protect poor people. Police protect rich people. They protect wealth. They protect capital. That's what police protect. Police are not protecting Black people in the inner city in Baltimore. And don't try to tell me they are, because I'm from there and I know. Let's be real. This is about people like Cenk Uygur and Anna Kasparian making sure that their wealth and capital and property is protected. That's why they don't want you to defund the police. They don't want you to defund the police and give the money to low-income Black and brown communities and invest in those communities because they're afraid secretly, they won't say this out loud, but I'm going to tell you, they're afraid you might get a leg up and they may see more of you in their community. Call it out. They're millionaires. And I noticed too, let me see if it's still here. Let me see if he's still here. I saw David Pakman chime in too. And of course he agreed with this. And he's another one. People need to stop calling David Pakman a leftist. David Pakman is a liberal. I'm calling it like I see it tonight. Now, if people like Cenk Uygur would have taken the time to talk to people who are abolitionists, to talk to people like those who organized 10 demands for justice, Nick, my comrade at RBN, was one of those people who organized 10 demands for justice. He would know about the road to abolition. But he won't talk to them. This is 10 demands for justice. To set the stage for abolition, there are 10 demands. Defund the police and reallocate resources to impacted communities. If you click on each demand, it goes into detail. I'm not going to do that for each one. We'll be here for a while if I do that, but I'm going to highlight all the demands. 2, demilitarize the police. Why would Cenk Uygur be in favor of having a militarized police? Do you see what happens when they don't talk to people who are actually the abolitionists? Let's go back in. 3, eliminate discriminatory policing, prosecution, and sentencing. Why would Cenk Uygur have a problem with that? 4, institute complete law enforcement transparency and accountability. Why would he have a problem with that? 5, independently investigate all police crimes and abuses of power. Do you guys see any problem with these demands so far? Because I do not. 6, Install community representation, oversight, and safety measures. Don't see a problem with it. 7, end strategic counter protest violence. Absolutely. 8, apologize and provide reparations. 100%. 9, end the war on drugs. And I've said this before, whether you agree or not, drugs should be decriminalized. Drugs should be legal in this country. What someone else chooses to put in their body is none of my business. Moving on to number 10, end carceral punishment. And they go into detail about how to do it. Now, this is from 10 demands. This is the group. A group of activists came together and came up with this. You have Awkward. Awkward's really big on police abolition. Cheyenne, Jen, there's Nick from RBN, Patrona, and Zoya. I would like to see Cenk Uygur talk to the activists of 10 Demands. Talk to the founders of 10 Demands about police abolition instead of making these wildly, somewhat semi-racist dog whistle statements on Twitter, making you look like a fool. That's what I would like to see. And I call it like I see it. And more people need to call it out. Eric, I'm ready whenever you are. We're going to do the call-in tonight. That's what the call-in is about. Cenk Uygur slams defund the police. And I want to hear from all of you guys. I'm going to take a quick break and I'll be back.
All right. And speaking of calling it out, that'll be your chance on call-in to have your say and call it out. Let's see, how's everybody doing on this almost Friday night? Get my mic up nice and high here. All right, we got super chats. We got some Rockfin. Let's see. We're going to bump things around here a little bit. We're going to put up our banner. So I'm just going to be here for a little while, giving Sabby a little break before the call-in show starts soon. Let me put the link for the call-in show into the chat. Let me find that here. There it is. All right, here it comes. I don't think she posted that one as a pin chat. Maybe she will later. All right, let's see. We got a chat here from my main man Corey. Psych. How do you pronounce that? Psilocybin will definitely be the next to see decriminalization and legalization after cannabis prohibition ends federally. Thanks for that. All right, let's see what else we got here for chats. We got, thanks for the super chat from CEB. Can we just admit TYT is right wing? Yeah, that sounds like a good thing to admit. Thanks for that one. JB Font coming in saying Cenk doesn't speak for the left either. And Kat responding to Cenk's comments, saying this is making me kind of pukey feeling, and I can feel you there, Kat. We were talking about police and what they do and don't do. Terry Hinton noting they don't protect blacks, and true that. And we had Delthea saying, according to Uygur, it's never the system's fault because the system is working for him. Well put, Delthea, and I hope we're going to hear from you on the call-in in a little while. That'll be starting shortly. All right, we have a paid comment here on the fins on Rockman. Thanks for this from Jacob Greismer. We got a link here from WBUR, NPR National Pentagon Radio, as Bill Blum called them, even calling out Biden's 100,000 cops. Didn't Bernie make a strange comment that seemed kind of racist in other African American commentaries, said not to vote for him, and now Biden does this? Thanks for that on the Rockfins, Jacob. All right, so Colin will be starting soon, and that's going to be that's going to be coming up here. Oh, that's going to be on Cenk Uygur's very interesting and we'll say what you will kind of comments. We got another late chat here from a comment from Roger on the rock fins. Let's see if I can make that come up. There's a little bit of delay sometimes when we're trying to do these. We're trying to show these comments. That's why sometimes when they come in late, we have to muck around and get them up here. Here we go. Roger, give me a hard time here. He said, Eric, do you leave your Christmas lights up all year round? And I think he's responding to the lights behind me here, and that's just a bit of our nice household decorations that I can't take responsibility for. I'm not the decorator, but those are actually called wedding lights, and they go through a pattern, and they just they just show a bit of decoration in the house. All right, the other thing I wanted to mention, that what came in the mail today, and Roger Meadows is going to love this, is they give us each year the Massachusetts information for voters. We'll see if Sabby got hers yet. And so this tells us about what our ballot measures are this year. And we got a nice letter here from the Secretary of State telling us about how great our democracy is. But the best one in here is what's referred to as colloquially as the millionaire's tax. Let's go to page 8 here, and we'll read a bit of this before Sabby comes back. She will be here soon. I'll post that link in again for Callin. You can get the Callin either through the link on your browser, or you can install the Callin app on your cell phone. So this is additional tax on income over $1 million. This is a Massachusetts ballot item, a ballot measure, and this is maybe the thing that kind of makes going to the ballot booth or doing your mail-in ballot, which they have both of here in Massachusetts, maybe the thing that makes it worthwhile, because I ain't voting for no Democrats. But it says this proposed constitutional amendment would establish an additional 4% tax on that portion of annual taxable income in excess of $1 million. The revenues from this tax would be used for public education, public colleges, university, and for the repair and maintenance of roads, bridges, and transportation. So it's not the perfect overriding systemic fix. It's definitely a good thing, and it's a bit of progressive taxation, and I feel like that's really one of the big things we need to be looking at is basically reducing the taxes on working people, of course on poor people, but on working people and really anybody who's not rich, and basically reducing their tax burden almost, basically down to zero with some exceptions. You start the taxation at, $1 million level, something like that. You tax the wealthy, you tax them progressively. You tax the big corporations, and you basically get your tax money that way. All right, Sabby, did you get your booklet yet?
Not yet, but I know the questions. I already saw them.
It just came in today. Yeah, I was talking about the question that Roger's going to really like, or he'll like them all, but the millionaire's tax.
Yeah. That's going to be a good one. So we're about to go into Call-In, guys. Tonight's discussion is Cenk Uygur slams defund the police. Recently, Cenk Uygur came out against defunding the police. Is there a class divide around defunding the police? We're going to talk about it tonight. The link is pinned to the top of the chat. So let's go ahead and get into that discussion. I'm going to close on here, and then I'll open up that call-in room. So see you guys over there. You know how we do this. Have a good night. Keep up the fight.